The Montgomery Ward and Company building at 619 West Chicago Avenue is a 17-story tower, completed in 1908, that the company built as the operational center of the mail-order catalog business that Aaron Montgomery Ward had invented 36 years earlier, and it is today one of the most expensive residential addresses on Chicago's near North Side. The same building, different function. The question this episode examines is whether that conversion is a success story or a forensic document. The answer is both simultaneously, and the distinction between the two depends on whose perspective you apply. The real estate developer who converted the building to luxury lofts in the early 2000s had a return on investment that the historic tax credit machine documented in Case File 106 made achievable. The Chicago near North Side residential market that absorbed the units at prices that validated the conversion economics, or the Montgomery Ward employees whose jobs were eliminated in the company's 2001 liquidation and who received no portion of the building's conversion value. The Montgomery Ward Tower is the physical survivor of a corporate collapse that eliminated 28,000 American jobs. The tower is now luxury lofts priced above $500,000 per unit. The jobs did not survive. The architecture did. The Case File 102 examination of Montgomery Ward's catalog business and its failure to survive digital disruption documented the company's institutional failure in business strategy terms. This episode examines the physical legacy, the buildings that the catalog empire built in Chicago, their fate after the company's collapse, and what the adaptive reuse of an iconic American corporate tower reveals about the relationship between institutional failure and real estate permanence. Subscribe now, because the Montgomery Ward Tower documents a specific proposition that this channel has examined across multiple case files. The institution fails, the building survives, and the building's survival is not the institution's redemption. Montgomery Ward's Chicago real estate presence at the time of the company's 2001 liquidation encompassed multiple properties, including the 1908 tower at 619 West Chicago Avenue, a catalog distribution complex on the Chicago River that Case File 102 referenced in its examination of the merchandise mart's history, and the broader operational infrastructure of a company that had at its peak been one of the largest employers in the Chicago metropolitan area. The 1908 tower's specific architectural characteristics, a 17-story reinforced concrete frame with a terracotta facade, large industrial windows designed for the natural light that catalog operations required, and floor plates configured for the open-plan layout of mass-scale administrative work, made it a candidate for residential adaptive reuse under the loft conversion model that Chicago's near North Side industrial corridor had been developing since the late 1980s. The loft conversion model, applied to former industrial and commercial buildings in Chicago, reflects the same logic that has produced adaptive reuse conversions across American cities. Former manufacturing and administrative buildings whose structural systems, window sizes, and floor plate configurations are compatible with residential occupancy when the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems are updated to residential standards, and whose historic character, exposed brick, concrete columns, industrial windows, commands a premium in the residential market whose buyers specifically seek the aesthetic that contemporary construction cannot replicate. The historic tax credit, documented in Case File 106, enabled the Montgomery Ward Tower conversion by providing the 20% federal credit against rehabilitation expenditures that made the conversion economics financially viable in a market where the construction cost of the rehabilitation exceeded what a conventional residential development of comparable unit count would have cost. The tower's conversion produced residential units whose asking prices at the time of initial sale reflected both the premium for the historic character and the premium for the near North Side location, a location whose desirability has increased steadily across the decades since the conversion, producing secondary market appreciation that the original conversion investors did not fully capture, but that documented the conversion's alignment with the Chicago residential market's long-term demand trajectory. The institutional gap between the Montgomery Ward corporate collapse and the tower's conversion success is the specific forensic observation that this episode develops. The real estate market absorbed the conversion and validated the investment without any connection to the institutional failure that made the conversion possible. The 28,000 workers whose jobs were eliminated in the 2001 liquidation were not the beneficiaries of the tower's conversion. The retail customers whose purchasing relationship with Montgomery Ward had sustained the company's operations for 129 years were not the beneficiaries. The communities across the United States where Ward operated its 250 stores whose commercial vitality the store closings reduced, were not the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries of the tower's conversion were the development entity that executed it, the historic tax credit investors who provided the conversion financing, and the residential purchasers who bought units in a building that the corporate collapse had made available at acquisition prices reflecting a liquidation transaction rather than a strategic disposition. This specific distribution of benefit is not unique to the Montgomery Ward case. It is the standard distribution that corporate real estate dispositions produce in liquidation contexts. The real estate's physical value survives the institution's collapse and is captured by the parties positioned to execute the conversion, while the institutional value, the jobs, the customer relationships, the community commercial presence, is not convertible to real estate value and disappears with the institution. The tower stands because concrete and steel do not file for bankruptcy. The jobs disappeared because businesses do. The relationship between corporate collapse and real estate adaptive reuse is the specific mechanism that this channel's archive has documented across multiple case files in different configurations. The Sears campus at Home and Square, documented in case file 065, producing the adaptive reuse challenge of a purpose-built industrial complex in a West Side Chicago neighborhood. The GE Fairfield campus, documented in case file 103, producing the suburban campus disposition challenge whose educational reuse reflected the campus's compatibility with Sacred Heart University's program requirements, and the Montgomery Ward Tower, producing the luxury residential conversion that the near North Side location and the historic building's character made possible. In each case, the corporate institution departed, and the building found a new use whose economic value was determined by the real estate market, rather than by any continuity with the institutional purpose the building had originally served. The question that the adaptive reuse cases collectively raise, and that the Montgomery Ward Tower's conversion from catalog operations to luxury lofts makes most visible, is whether the building's survival constitutes a form of institutional preservation or a form of institutional erasure. The catalog operations that Aaron Montgomery Ward invented in 1872 and that made the Chicago Tower necessary are not preserved in the tower's luxury residential units. The architectural fabric of the 1908 building is preserved. The institutional purpose it expressed is entirely absent. The tower is preserved because the preservation was financially viable. The catalog business is not preserved because the catalog business is not a financial asset that a conversion project can monetize. The Montgomery Ward Tower's current status as a landmark residential address in Chicago's near North Side reflects the specific real estate market trajectory that has validated the conversion across the 2 decades since its completion. The near North Side residential market has appreciated substantially. The loft premium has been sustained by continued demand from buyers seeking the industrial character that new construction cannot produce, and the building's historic designation has prevented the physical alterations that would have eliminated the character premium. What the Montgomery Ward Chicago Tower reveals in the context of this channel's 111 case archive is the specific relationship between corporate failure and real estate permanence that this channel has examined across multiple case files. The institution is temporary, the building is permanent, and the building's permanence is not the institution's redemption. It is simply evidence that concrete outlasts corporate strategy. Aaron Montgomery Ward invented the American retail delivery model in 1872. The building he built to house that model is now Luxury Lofts. Amazon, which operates the 21st century version of the same consumer insight, is worth approximately $2 trillion. The catalog is gone, the building is expensive, the insight is $2 trillion. The institution that failed to follow the insight from catalog to digital is not present in any of those 3 outcomes. This content was developed using artificial intelligence tools as part of the research, writing, and production process. All AI-generated material was subject to human review, editorial intervention, and approval before publication.